everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Scholar Chit Chat Podcast. I'm your host for this episode, and my name is Joanne. And I will be chatting with OJ about everything graduate school. We're talking about the pros and the cons and how to actually fund graduate school. If this is your first time tuning into this podcast, welcome. We're glad to have you here. And you're wondering what's going on. Well, this is Scholar Chit Chat Podcast, and here we're committed to bringing you relevant information to help your study abroad dreams and just think anything, scholarship opportunities, SOPs, motivation letter, just everything to study abroad. And to at least returning listeners, we're glad to have you back. So like I said, I'm not alone. I have OJ with me, and she'll be pouring into us today. So I would suggest you get your pen and book close to you. Hello, OJ. I'm happy to have you for this episode.
Hi,
So for our
Joanne.
welcome for our first time listeners, please introduce yourself.
Thank you so much. Hi, Joanne. Hi, everybody
Welcome.
listening. So I'm OJ Ojonugwa. Actually, my name is Ojonugwa, and I'm actually the founder of Scholar Chit Chat, the podcast. And I mean, if you've been here with us, depends on how often you listen to us. If you've been listening to us for a while, you heard my voice more frequently in the first 2 years of the podcast, or at least the first 1.5 years. Now you hear more of John's voice and goodness and stuff like that. But anyway, I'm a PhD student at the University of Edinburgh. I'm quite passionate about scholarships. Someone who has benefited from scholarships from my undergraduate days to my master's, and now even as a PhD, even now doing a PhD and a scholarship, I can see how, one, scholarships help you achieve your dream, and two, how education kind of uplifts people and can change lives. So I'm passionate about affording everyone who is interested in kind of leveraging educational opportunities to change their lives and to access scholarships and all that. So that's what Scholar Teacher is about, and that's what we always talk about. So if you're interested in those kind of things, I can say you're in the right place, and this is going to be an interesting episode.
Yeah, I agree. That's why OJ is the best guest for this episode, because we're talking about everything graduate school. And as someone that has benefited from it, as in she's the best person to talk to us about graduate school. So I'm very happy to have you for this episode, OJ.
Thank you. You flatter me.
I have to. I don't have a choice. Start from the basics, like from the beginning. What is graduate school? So for someone that is just hearing for the first time and doesn't know what graduate school is, what will you tell the person about graduate school? How will you explain graduate school to the person?
Thank you, John. That's a very, very good question. I think we've spoken about this partly in some of our earlier episodes. I can't actually remember the title, but probably one of the first two. And I know we also kind of did a webinar, grad school 101, which is on our YouTube channel. People can listen. But I'm just going to give a very short, brief answer to what graduate school is. So basically, graduate school is, or what some people may know it as postgraduate school, is educational endeavor that you pursue after completing a bachelor's or undergraduate degree. So if you decide to further your studies, which is another language we use, you'll be pursuing postgraduate studies, or for short, graduate studies. So it could be a master's and it could be a PhD, or not a PhD, it could be a master's, it could be a doctoral study. I don't want to say PhD because in some places a doctoral degree is not a PhD, it's like a DPhil. They call some DPhil. They're about similar things, which is why when you say master, because for instance, I didn't say you pursue an MSc, because master's is not just an MSc. It could be an MA, it could be an MEd, it could be an MPhil. So you could be pursuing a master's, you could be pursuing doctoral degree. Either of those two are postgraduate or graduate degrees.
Thank you very much for that response. Now to the next question. Do you think everyone needs to go to grad school? Anyone needs to attend?
That's also another brilliant question. Thanks for asking that. I would say that no, I don't think everybody should go for graduate education. I don't think so. Education is beneficial. I'm sure we'll talk a bit more about benefits later, but I'm not going to say it's not beneficial. It's beneficial, but I would say that not everything is for everybody. And I'm backing on I'm backing on postgraduate or furthering your education is not something that should be done lightly. I mean, for some people, opportunities to begin building a career like in other fields. Like some people can decide to work in the industry, you can decide to get real work experience, right? Which is sort of an educational pursuit in its own. It's an educational endeavor just out of the four walls of the classroom. Could be beneficial for some people. For some people, yeah, so that's it. So I mean, for some people even struggle through undergraduate bachelor studies. So obviously, if you're struggled, you may not want to continue struggling in the classroom. Some people benefit from real world experience. And for some professions or for some endeavors that people will pursue, going further, getting a further degree, may not have any benefit at all.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you kind of answered the next question I was going to ask. So yeah, I was going to say who should consider graduate school, but you kind of mentioned that there are some people that is actually very beneficial for them.
Apart from just career prospects, I think for some time, some people do pursue graduate studies for personal reasons. Like that. So personal reasons. There's some people that just want to be called doctor, and it's a good enough reason to pursue a PhD. If I don't know how much it will sustain you, but for some people it's enough to actually drive them through whatever kind of difficulties they will face. The fact that I'm going to be called doctor, and then they just go ahead. So that's completely fine. But for other people, they do it for career progression. That's one. So for some people, they need to get them. I think the master's is good for that one. For some people, to get a master's, or you need to get another, even a postgraduate diploma. Actually, some people get a postgraduate diploma and they need it to get promoted at work. And then I think the ultimate one, which is mostly applicable to a PhD, is if you want a career in academia. So if you want to become a professor or a lecturer, for instance, a PhD is non-negotiable. Like it's really, I'm not gonna have people that are going to be honorary doctors that university just gives you the title. No, people that want to be a PhD and have that kind of doctor attached to their name and become a professor, work teaching in higher educational institutions, you need to be a PhD. So those are people for that I would say is non-negotiable. For a master's, and I think nowadays in our society, masters is becoming more prevalent. Previously, I mean, undergraduate studies, getting a bachelor's degree was a pinnacle. Like it was, you have a bachelor's. It was something that was kind of okay. It was satisfactory to get you a job. But even now, like even to get entry-level jobs, sometimes a master's degree kind of makes you more competitive. So that's another reason why sometimes people want to go for it, because like, I can't even get a job. The job market is very tight. Maybe if I have a master's, they will pick me. Some people have that idea. Or for some people, they didn't really get good grades for their undergraduate studies. So they finished the 2-2 or a third class. They may be like, I'll go for a postgraduate diploma or I'll go for a master's. Another way, actually, that just came to my mind now, where people go for postgraduate degree is people who want to switch careers. Like there's some careers you can switch to where you don't necessarily have to go and spend 4 years for a bachelor's. You just spend 1 year or 2 years to get a master's degree and you have switched effectively to a new field. So postgraduate studies help in that way, where you actually can switch. And I know we have an episode talking about this switching careers, graduate school, how to switch careers. So yeah, it's completely possible to do that.
Thank you very much, Uji, for that wonderful answer. So now to the next question. Let's talk about the benefit. Like, what are the biggest pros for having maybe master's degree just for graduate school generally?
So I think I mentioned some of them. I think I mentioned a bit of them talking about when I was answering your previous question, like the reasons why people should. I think the reasons why people should are some of the benefits I've mentioned. I talked about the fact that people can use it to switch careers. So you want to change, you can use it. So that's the benefit. So you can change your career in just a short period of time, because bachelor's degree is 4 years and then a master's degree is 1 year or 2 years. So you can switch degrees instead of going back to school and starting from scratch and doing it in 2 years, especially when it's not like a professional degree. Like you're not going to study medicine or pharmacy or engineering or architecture, for instance. Those ones you probably will need to do a bachelor's. But if you want to switch from sociology to psychology, I want to believe you can just do a master's. If you want to switch from science to education, those kind of things, a master's is a very good kind of bridge to help you start a new career. Benefits again, it can help you get promoted at work, right? Because obviously you're learning further, you get more skills, you get more knowledge. So that's one reason why people, as I said, that's one reason why people go back, because they want to get promoted at work, want to be able to take on new responsibilities, want to learn new skills. So these are also what I've just said now also benefits. During the master's degree, you learn new skills. One of the very very important skills you learn or you should learn at the master's degree level that are not taught during the bachelor's degree is the skill of critical thinking.
Yeah.
So a lot of times undergraduate level is your first introduction to a particular field of study. So obviously in secondary school or high school, you're probably being introduced to, you do a wide range of courses. You do the maths, English, chemistry, physics, if you're a science student, or literature, government, etc., whatever it is they do. But when you get to the undergraduate level, you're introduced into a particular field of study. You could decide to study botany, zoology, sociology, law, whatever. That's a new introduction. What the undergraduate studies, what you learn there is the facts of a particular field of study. So I studied microbiology, for instance. It was my introduction to study microorganisms and blah blah blah. I learned the facts. I wasn't really supposed to be critiquing what I was learning. I was just supposed to be learning about the field. But when you get to graduate school, you're supposed to ask questions. You're supposed to critique the information you kind of know. You're supposed to be able to engage with the latest findings. So you already kind of have your background you learned during you got during your undergraduate studies, and then in your postgraduate studies, you get to learn, especially in your masters, you get to learn what are the latest developments. So it gives you superior higher knowledge compared to what you had previously, and then you're able to ask questions, really challenge the facts you know or things you learned at undergraduate level, question them to know if it's really true, and then how to, at the PhD level, you're trying to add to the knowledge that already exists. So at the end of your PhD, you are most times what's expected from you at the end of your PhD is that you are contributing something that the world has never known before. It doesn't have to be too groundbreaking, but at the end of your PhD, you are producing new knowledge, adding new knowledge to the knowledge that already exists in your field. So that's how the different levels of postgraduate studies. So you learn new skills. For me, once I can talk from my own lived experience, as a master's student, I learned how to assess critical thinking, I learned how to write, I learned how to read and engage scientific literature because I'm a scientist. I learned how to read and engage with scientific literature, which is not an easy feat. If you read all those journals, a lot of jargons and like scientific jargons, it takes a lot to be able to understand what they're trying to say. So I learned all those things. So that was really nice. Postgraduate level, at a PhD level now, I'm learning how to actually conduct experiments, rigorous experiments that span multiple years. When I say experiments, I don't mean going to the lab, but just analysis. Perhaps I can use the word analysis that would span and ask questions that would take years to answer, because PhD spans multiple years, 3 to 4, 5 years in some cases. So yeah, those are the kind of things you learn perseverance. You learn how to manage projects, which is essentially what I'm doing as a PhD student. You're your own boss. You learn how to manage projects. Sometimes you learn how to apply for grants. You learn public speaking and presentation, because you have to learn how to present your findings across different audience, from people who don't understand. For instance, for me as a scientist, you have to learn how to present it to people who don't understand science at all, up to and as well to people who are experts in your field. So sometimes I'm talking to children, presenting my research. Other times I'm speaking to professors, trying to explain what I'm doing. So I need to learn how to communicate across a wide range of audiences. So yeah, so you learn a lot actually. Apart from just your field, you learn other skills that are transferable to different professions.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think I'll just add, especially for people that will get the opportunity to go out of their country or go out of their comfort zone, I think networking is also underrated.
Actually, you get opportunities as well. Actually, I won't lie that actually postgraduate degree opens you to opportunities. We've mentioned it, like I kind of hinted at it saying promotion, but apart from promotion, there are kind of other open doors that just furthering your education opens. Other doors that further education opens for you. So yeah, I definitely do recommend to the right people.
Yeah, thank you. So to the next question, we've heard about the pros. Let's talk about the cons. Do you think there are downsides to graduate school? If yes, what are they?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I can say possibly there are possible downsides. It depends. So in some cases, let me start from a very obvious one. Depends on whether or not you are funded. If you are not on a scholarship and you have to pay for yourself, it's very expensive. It could be a very financially intensive endeavor, right? So it takes a lot of money if you are. It's expensive if you are not funded. Then cons. So that's one, right? It can take a lot of money if you're not funded. Even if you're funded, it can take a time. Sometimes, and it's in fact, I think one of the big cons that a lot of people know is that even on scholarships, postgraduate degrees don't pay a lot of money. Now that'll be surprising for people who see it as a ladder. It's a ladder, but doesn't pay a lot of money. A lot of times, people who work actual jobs, at least in high income countries, so places where people are migrating to. So for instance, I'm in the UK now studying for a PhD. I'm paid very close to what is minimum minimum wage. And what I would reference that people who are like, if you are like maybe a plumber in the UK, you probably earn more than me. I'm a PhD student. So a plumber, a train driver, a bus driver, I earn maybe similar to what a bus driver earns. Anybody that kind of works any menial job full time probably earns about the same thing as a PhD student, at least in the UK. And I know in a lot of countries it's quite similar. Generally, if people in graduate school are not paid a lot, even on scholarship. So that's, you are fortunate to even have. So I said, first of all, it's expensive. If you're not fortunate to have a scholarship, it's not that one. I can't tell. It's a very huge advantage because you've been there for a lot of money. But if you are fortunate to get a scholarship, there are very few scholarships that actually pay substantially more than minimum wage. Now, when I say minimum wage, I'm not talking about the kind of minimum wage that happens in Africa, for instance, where it's not a living wage. In a lot of developed countries, a minimum wage is actually a wage that you can live on. So people live on minimum wage and you're able to pay all your bills, you're able to pay your rent. You can even have a car. You can even go on vacation on minimum wage because it's wage that you're supposed to be able to live on. But what I'm trying to say is that you are not at all highly paid in the society. So, but then you are doing very important work. You're doing a lot of knowledge, brain work, contributing to knowledge, and it seems like you are getting paid I think it's kind of like being a teacher or being a doctor. You see, like, these are very, very important professions, but sometimes you feel like they should be paid more than they actually are. For instance, of late, I was reading an article about how much an astronaut at NASA is being paid. You think they are paid a lot of money? Those are people that are going into space and etc. They actually are not paid that much. I was quite surprised, even though it's very competitive and stuff like that. When I saw this, I said, I don't think it was not up to $100,000. It wasn't like per annum. So essentially, it's kind of the same thing. So another thing is that sometimes doing graduate school can feel like a life course. I'll explain. So sometimes they feel, because you are in school, it feels like for a lot of people, and it can be quite intensive, right? It can be quite demanding. A lot of times people don't move on in other aspects of their life, so it's quite difficult for people who are interested in maybe starting families and stuff like that, for people to put that on hold just because of the rigors of graduate school. Maybe difficult to find a life partner or to date. If actually dating, I've heard that dating is difficult in graduate school, and then talking of getting married and of having children as well. If you are maybe interested in academia, sometimes the career progression or career ladder is not too straightforward or clear, and then like in most of that things, it's competitive. But as I said, sometimes you can feel like waste of time, because if you maybe you moved to the UK, for instance, I'm going to use the UK because I'm more conversant with the UK, with a friend of yours who started on a job and you started your PhD, you're most likely receiving the minimum wage salary for the 3, 4, 5 years that you're going to do your PhD, while within that 5 years, friend is going to get promoted. And if your friend, at least your friend will be promoted at least twice, your friend will be promoted every year, who knows? So the person is going to move from being entry level to being maybe mid-career, while once you finish, even when you finish your PhD, you are still an early career researcher. And even if you leave academia and go into the industry, you will still just be starting a career. So like, even though you're acquiring knowledge, it seems as though you've paused your life and haven't really started a career. So that I would say that's like a major con for doing a PhD. But as well, as I've said before, sometimes a PhD is a criteria for some fields, or a master's as well. Master's is not too bad, I would say, because it's just 1 or 2 years. You can afford course, and a lot of time master's gives you the edge, competitive edge, or you're able to earn a higher salary. The PhD, which is longer, can feel like a pause on life and not necessarily give you a boost instantly.
Yeah, I agree. I think your answer have opened my eyes, and I think with every other person that will be listening to this episode, about the downsides to graduate school, especially PhD. So it's something that every listener should put into consideration when preparing for a PhD or applying for a PhD. Now to the big question that I know a lot of people will be asking. Okay, we've heard about graduate school. We know what graduate school is now. We know the advantages. We know the disadvantages. Now, how can I fund graduate school studies?
You're right. So I've hinted at it already. I've hinted at it in the sense that I talked about scholarships. So I would say that's a big thing. You have to be on the lookout for scholarships or funding. Obviously, there's opportunities to be self-funded. But a lot of times, even when people say they are self-funded, they are going into debt. You can borrow money, you can take a loan. That's one way to actually fund yourself to graduate school, right? You can take a loan. But I would advise that people should get a scholarship, which is kind of like an investment. So it's like an organization or the government, charity or whatever, foundation has right to kind of invest in your life and provide money that is needed for you, for your fees. At the very least, a lot of times people get part fees. People can get full fees. People can get fees and a stipend. So that's like a salary. Sometimes people get jobs. I know in the US, that's a major thing. You kind of work for the school and are paid. Even in EU. But then I would just say that we've talked about scholarship. That's all we're all about, scholarship chat, right? What about talking about scholarships? So if you look at some of our earlier episodes, we talk about how to even get started applying for scholarships, and what we have been doing in the past year is highlighting different scholarships and their requirements and explaining the process and all those things. I would encourage everybody listening. Like, you, a lot of times what you need to get funding is to be able to tell your story. One, to be able to find the right opportunity, and two, to be able to sell yourself to whoever is willing to invest in you.
Okay, so you've heard about graduate school, you've heard about how to fund your graduate school, and now if your next question is how to find the scholarship and how to make your application stand out, I'll still repeat what OJ said, and go to our channel, YouTube, Substack, even on LinkedIn. You can get like direct link to these episodes. We have episodes on scholarship, on different scholarships. You can just select from there. Yes, you can just select from there, start listening. Even if the scholarship is not yet open now, I'll suggest you listen to it, digest it, and start preparing for when the scholarship will be open. Thank you very much. Now to the next question. Can you share with us how to plan for graduate school?
Again, there are a lot of ways you could plan. But again, some of our episodes we've talked in more detail about like specifics of getting into graduate school. But I'd say a very good way to start is just to research, truly, because what you're going to do in graduate school anyway is to research. So you can start by researching how to get in. Research how to get in. So you want to find out what are the opportunities available to you? What do you need to apply? Am I eligible to apply? Do I meet the requirements, the eligibility? So that kind of research is what you need. And a lot of times to point you back to the documents you need, to point you back to the kind of experiences you need, to point you back to learning how to write like a statement of purpose, telling yourself to the selection committee. Then so those are kind of things that will lead you back to. But I would say what you need to do to plan is you need to sit down, you need to research, and again, there are a lot of good resources. So Scholarship Chat is one of them, and there's several on YouTube, and there's several blogs, there's several articles on social and videos on different social media platforms. You just have to apply yourself. I would say be patient and be strategic. As you be strategic in your research, don't just be reading and don't keep notes. Keep notes and then sit down and formulate a plan. Once you know all the requirements, all the deadlines, think about taking action. Don't just be planning for a very long time. Once you've planned your strategy, then take action. That's what I'll say.
Yeah, so I'll just add that I think if you're just hearing about like graduate school scholarships or any of these for the first time, I think I'll just advise that the first thing you do is start reaching out to your lecturers and school, start preparing your recommendation letter, and then if possible, start preparing to get your passport also. Since most of the opportunities that are juicy and then that can actually help are the ones that are outside Nigeria, so you need your passport. So I think that's also very, very important. Like, get your recommendation letters ready, start letting them know that you need them for recommendation, and get your passport.
Yeah, that's right. You're completely right.
Yeah. So the last question. So if you could give one piece of advice to someone considering graduate school, what will it be?
I would say you have to count your costs, right? You have to make sure. I've listed a few pros, I've listed a few cons. You have to sit down and weigh your own situation. I feel like it's a case by case, personal kind of decision you have to come to. Will it be worth it for me? A lot of times I would say graduate school probably never truly be a waste. There's cons, probably never truly be a waste, because you would learn, I've said, beyond your field of study, you gain other skills. So if there's no other competing opportunities, like you're not turning down lucrative jobs. Some people turn down lucrative jobs for a PhD and they're totally wrong with that. As I said, personal. But like for some people, there's no other alternative. There's nothing that you could be doing. So I would say for those kind of people, graduate school is never going to be a con. It's never going to be a waste, because you will learn so much. You'll become much better for it. But other than that, if you are thinking there are many ways, there are many paths I want to take, I could become a business person, become an entrepreneur, I could do this, I could do that, maybe I could also go to graduate school, then sit down and really think for yourself, and again, consider some of the pros, consider some of the cons I've listed, and as it applies to you, and then make a choice. That's just it. That's life. Life is, there's always going to be an opportunity cost. You're going to have to choose one over the other. Or just make sure that you're going to graduate school with open eyes, because it's not a piece of cake, right? It's hard work. It's hard work. You are going to be using your brain, going to be using a lot of mental energy. If you're even living home, it's even worse. Like if you are going to another country, you are leaving behind everything you know, everything you're familiar with. going to a new place, going to a new culture, and as if that's not enough, you're going to add the hardship of actually learning something new, applying yourself critically. So it's difficult. I will not lie, it's not easy. It's not, oh, I've escaped to greener pastures, my life is now smoother. No, and I've even talked about the money again. I hope it's an insight. It gives some insight to people who are thinking about it. Obviously, as I said, it's living wage. Like, you are going to be able to live, you'll be comfortable on the money, but you're not going to be rich. A lot of people that work outside, as I said, a plumber could actually earn more than you. Probably earning almost something as a cleaner. In actual honest terms. So you're not in any way going to be rich in most cases. There are probably there are exceptions to this, right? There are some scholarships that are very exceptional and give you very good pay. But most of the time, scholarships just give you enough to live, because obviously you're a scholar, you're supposed to be focused on books. You're not focused on building wealth. It's not for you to be building wealth. It's not about building skills. It's a scholarship. So those are things that people have to. So if you know you want to make money, you are hustling. Maybe entrepreneurship is for you. Maybe you should actually apply for a job, look for other ways. So as I said, there's a lot to think about. It's not just, don't just wake up and jump on it. So it's not easy, but I would say there's not too much cons.
Thank you very much for the advice, and I believe it will help someone listening, as that's helped me also. And yes, thank you very much. And to our listeners, we hope you found this episode enlightening and helpful. Don't forget to share this episode with someone who's thinking about graduate school also, or someone that you think needs graduate school. Remember, like Oja says, graduate school can open doors to several experiences for you and the chance to make a real difference in academia. Until next time, keep striving and stay inspired.
Thank you for having me. Bye, everybody.